New Mexico Crime Files, a deep dive into the archives, shocking and notorious cases, the arrests and what led to them, and what happened to the suspect. Here are your hosts, Dean Staley and Jessica Garate.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of New Mexico Crime Files. I am KRQE's Dean Staley. Did you hear that, Jess? I made that possessive?
Yes.
Like I belong to KRQE? Yeah, along with my co-anchor, Jessica Garate.
I also belong to KRQE.
This is also KRQE's Jessica Garate. So here we are.
Welcome, everyone.
Glad to be with you. This one is a crazy one.
This was just an unbelievable tale because of the scale of this case. So this was known as New Mexico's Bernie Madoff. He had this real estate mogul who was very popular and was able to exploit everyone's trust, take millions in bogus investments, and then use that to live this incredibly lavish lifestyle.
Yeah, and one of the things I think we all are interested in these sorts of crimes where it's someone, like you said, Jess, who is like an upstanding citizen, who is in the community, someone who's respected, a successful businessman, worked his way up as a realtor, then had his own real estate company, and then eventually turned it into an investment company. And to see them fall is shocking sometimes.
And it was just so sad because you saw hundreds of people that we spoke with knew they were never going to see this money again, and it was their life savings. Yeah. So let's start from the beginning. Here's a look at the day that everything started to unfold.
Dick, the commission says the $80 million in losses is more than 20 times the actual value of the investments Vaughan was selling. The SEC complaint filed in U.S. District Court yesterday alleges that Vaughan issued promissory notes to about 600 investors, guaranteeing them returns of up to 25%. But according to the complaint, Vaughan paid some of those investors back not with profits, but with new investors' money. Last night, a judge also granted the SEC's request for a temporary restraining order and asset freeze on Vaughan and his companies. The commission alleges Vaughan transferred nearly all the money he raised from Vaughan Capital investors to the company's operating account, then used those funds to cover business expenses and obligations to promissory note holders. The State Regulation and Licensing Department's Securities Division has also been investigating Vaughan. It suspects that he's been soliciting people to invest in his projects, even though he is not a licensed securities broker.
Is there anything in this report that surprises me? No. But we're still in the middle of our investigation, and our investigation is similar in some respects. Obviously, there's similar issues, but our investigation is a criminal investigation.
Vaughan and his Vaughan Company realtors filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection last month. Dick?
The SEC wants unspecified financial penalties, and it is also seeking a court order to make Vaughan give up any money that he made.
So he was able to carry out this scheme, and that was from 2005 to around 2010 when he was busted.
Yeah, and this is interesting because as soon as the charges are filed, we learn a lot of information because there had been rumors, there was investigations, and as you heard in that piece, a month earlier, we started hearing noise about, or even months before that, about bankruptcies, that there were financial problems within Doug Vaughan's realty company, right, his investment company. And suddenly from the charges, we learned $80 million is how much has gone missing, that he may have stolen. SEC's complaint, 600 investors. Crazy. That
he was able to convince. And you've got to think, this is someone who was very trusted. And, when you're saying 25% returns, why not?
Sure.
He had this great thriving real estate business. Why wouldn't you trust him? And
just like Bernie Madoff, everyone looked at him and said, well, if you're getting those kinds of returns, you must be really good at what you do, and we want in on this thing, right? So there's this sort of this motive like, why shouldn't I get in on this and make way more money than you could anywhere else?
And of course, you've got to be Doug Vaughan knowing that the walls are coming in, caving in, like everything, it's about to go down. Once this report comes out, once these charges come, it's just a matter of days until he's arrested.
Right, and that is the next story coming up. This has to do with the day it happened that he gets arrested, and reporting the story is our own Kim Baez.
Good afternoon, I'm Kim Baez. Doug Vaughan got an early morning knock on the door from the feds. He was hauled off in handcuffs from a home in the North Valley just hours after a federal grand jury handed down a 30-count indictment alleging money laundering, mail and wire fraud, and false writing of documents.
The magnitude, I think, was it's profound. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money and a lot of people who had trusted Mr. Vaughan.
U.S. Attorney Ken Gonzalez says Doug Vaughan stole $76 million from 600 investors over a 5-year period. It started as a legitimate promissory note program involving his realty business in 1993. But prosecutors allege in 2005 it turned into a Ponzi scheme. They say Vaughan invested just a fraction of the money as promised and used the rest to keep up his lavish lifestyle and to help keep his realty business afloat. Before he knew it, he was $76 million in the hole.
I think as he got himself deeper into this, the more he was having to solicit these kinds of investments only to support the earlier investors.
The charges Vaughan is facing carry a possible sentence of 475 years in prison. But prosecutors aren't just looking to put him behind bars. They're looking to forfeit this modest home in Las Vegas, Nevada, which he owns, and they want a judge to order Vaughan to pay $74 million in restitution. But it's a tough challenge since much of Vaughan's property and his mansion in Albuquerque have already been seized in his bankruptcy case.
The reality is a lot of the money is gone, and we can't expect that any of the investors are going to be paid or made whole by this.
But those investigating and prosecuting this case say they will work as hard as they can to help these victims and make Doug Vaughan pay.
This goes beyond just the loss for a few victims. This involves a deep loss of trust by a prominent figure in a community.
So one of the most heartbreaking parts about this, now that the other shoe has dropped, right? We've got an arrest, we've got, and the feds are laying out their case, is that you realize that the money's gone. So you have 600 people who invested with Doug Vaughan, and it may have been their life savings, right?
Yeah.
If you're in on a good thing, why not put all your money in there and watch it grow and double it or triple it, whatever. And just like with Bernie Madoff,
yes,
people lost everything.
Yes, and it's just hard hearing that U.S. attorney saying, the fact of the matter is this money's mostly gone.
Yeah.
And then you have to complicate things. It's going through bankruptcy. So they've already seized the home. So now it's really tied up and all these legal wranglings.
Yeah.
And these people are just left without anything.
Yeah.
Now to pull something off like this, Dean, you can't be the only person knowing about it. So when we come back, we're going to talk about how the feds went after others in his office. And welcome back, everyone. Of course, we are talking today about New Mexico's, as he was dubbed, it's Bernie Madoff. It's Doug Vaughan and the $80 million he stole from hundreds of investors here in Albuquerque.
Right, and everyone knew this man's name. I want to remind people that he was one of those iconic figures in the community that, Doug Vaughan Realtors, Doug Vaughan Realty. I mean, he was just sort of like this known entity that was well respected until all of this came down.
Yes,
yeah.
and that's how he was able to really earn all these people's trust and sell them basically a bogus line of here's how the returns, I'm going to give you 25% returns on your money, and obviously that did not happen. So we've been going through his Ponzi scheme, but to carry out something like this, we're talking about more than 600 people investing $80 million. And so the feds are like, okay, you're not the only person that knows. Let's start going through the office and seeing who was aware and what role they played in this Ponzi scheme.
That's right. And Crystal Gutierrez is reporting now on one of the individuals inside the Doug Vaughan organization who was absolutely in on this whole thing.
It's another lawsuit against another insider in the Doug Vaughan Ponzi scheme that bilked hundreds of investors out of more than $70 million. The suit names the disgraced Albuquerque real estate tycoon's accountant, Patty Maddox. It flat out says Maddox should have known that Vaughan Company Realtors' financial information reflected that of a Ponzi scheme. She worked for Vaughan Company Realtors from 1993 to 2010, closing the monthly books, preparing year-end balances. During that time, VCR issued promissory notes to hundreds of investors guaranteeing unusually high returns, saying the notes were secured by real estate and Vaughan's personal wealth. The suit says Maddox should have known VCR only had a fraction of the revenue and real estate holdings needed to back the notes. It says she had access to financial information that revealed the promissory note program had tripled to $74 million in just 5 years. Investors like Ronald Frank, his wife, and mother-in-law invested nearly $500,000 total and lost it all.
I'm 61. We're retired. My wife is actually disabled, and we depended on that income.
Frank says if Maddox knew, she should have said something and agrees with the suit filed by the government-appointed trustee of VCR's bankruptcy estate. The suit does not say how much she should have to pay or if she profited from the scheme, but if she has any money, Frank doesn't think he'll see any of it.
I don't think there will be a dime left after attorney's fees and court costs and all that. I don't think there will be a dime left.
All right, so people from that story are on the record now suing, saying, look, you were inside this organization. You had to have known this was a bogus investment scheme. We want to hold you accountable. Yeah.
And they should have spoken up. They knew they had access to all of these records. When you make $75 million in 5 years, obviously something else is going on in that office.
And let me explain just a part of that story. You hear promissory note. That's just, for those who don't know, that's just a financial agreement, right? You say, you give me X number of dollars now, I'll give you a promissory note, which is just a promise that on X date in the future, I'll give you X number of dollars, right? So he was just handing out, taking in money and handing out promissory notes saying, I'll get you your return on this investment later. Yeah.
And I think the shocking out of this is then you get to see the way he was living and using all of the people's life savings. It's just really despicable, using all their life savings and spending it on this like incredibly lavish lifestyle. I've never, I mean, he lived in a mansion.
Yeah.
And you could see that over and over again in our stories. And I can't imagine being one of those investors and looking at that and saying, here, that's where my money went.
Right, because you think all along, oh, this is so successful. Sure, that's the fruits of his labor. He has this massive mansion. Why shouldn't he? And then you realize later, oh, wait a second, he stole all that money, and that's why he has this mansion. And the mansion is pretty over the top.
I think
is
very
the word.
over
Gaudy
the top.
Might be
Yeah, gaudy
word.
is.
But it had Doug Vaughan, DV. It had the crest of the company all over the inside and marble and different weird stuff.
Just
yeah,
massive. And he was the only person living there. This mansion of a house that we would show. We've put our helicopter over it, and it's just ginormous. We're going to see that and see how the feds tried to get as much money as they could back from Doug Vaughan.
Yep.
We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back. We have come to this point, Jess, in this crime where the gig's up, right?
Yeah.
Doug Vaughan has stolen $70 to $80 million from more than 600 investors, and he's finally, in this case, admitting guilt.
Yes, and he was indicted in February of 2011 on 30 counts. That included wire and mail fraud, money laundering, false documents, and he was pled guilty later that year and admitted to deceiving. And here is a look at that sentencing.
Vaughan admitted today to bilking hundreds of his investors out of more than $74 million in a Ponzi scheme. The 64-year-old former Albuquerque real estate executive took a plea deal in federal court, a deal that won't put him away for long. News 13's Amanda Goodman was at that hearing. She joins us live from Santa Fe.
Well, Jessica, before this deal, Vaughan was facing up to 475 years in prison. Now he'll spend just a fraction of that behind bars.
He admitted completely the scheme that he perpetrated on a lot of very good people.
That admission came this afternoon at the federal courthouse in Santa Fe. Doug Vaughan was facing a 30-count indictment stemming from a Ponzi scheme he operated for 5 years under his now defunct real estate company. He took a deal, pleading guilty to just 2 charges, wire fraud and mail fraud. He's looking at 10 to 12 years in prison.
For a man such as himself, who's been used to a very lavish lifestyle, I'm sure is not anything he looks forward to.
As part of the deal, Vaughan detailed how he swindled more than $74 million from 600 investors between 2005 and 2010. He was ordered to pay restitution, but the U.S. Attorney's Office admits it's highly unlikely those investors will ever see their money again.
The money that they invested and trusted to Mr. Vaughan is gone forever.
Vaughan's deal comes on the heels of another deal worked out with his former accounting manager, Martha Runkle. She, too, was charged in connection with the Ponzi scheme. But earlier this month, court documents showed she had worked out an agreement with prosecutors that required her to testify against Vaughan. Prosecutors say that was the turning point in this case.
The fact that Ms. Runkle was charged and pled, we do believe, was a significant turn in this particular case.
Vaughan himself evaded cameras at the courthouse. His attorneys didn't have much to say.
I'm sorry, we're not going to comment this afternoon. Can't talk to him.
Not until when? I'm sorry. Attorney, The U.S. Attorney said this is a good deal, adding that even though their evidence was strong, you can never guarantee a guilty verdict in a trial setting. Jessica?
So a lot of people were not happy about the 12 years.
I'm just going to say, Jess, this is one of those things that just I think everyone usually get outraged. This is a man who was facing 30 counts of criminal charges, right? That would have added up to almost 500 years in prison, right? Had he been convicted in all of them. He's able to plead it down to 2, wire fraud and mail fraud, and reduce the possible sentence to 10 to 12 years. This is incredible to me. 70 to 80 million dollars from 600 people. Some of these 600 people, I mean, that's a lot of people that you've hurt, a lot of people that you've stolen from, a lot of people whose lives you've ruined. And to be out of prison at the very least in 10 or 12 years. I mean, that's all you have to serve. This was shocking to me, and I can't believe, I think a lot of people were disgusted by this.
It really was. And you hear the Fed saying, you know, for someone who lived this kind of lavish lifestyle, you know, all of a sudden being behind bars, for these people who've lost everything and know that they're not going to get very much of it back, or if anything, and that he's only going to spend 12 years, and he's already out.
Yeah,
so he
is out today as we speak.
And he did try to get out even earlier than the 12 years. And the judge said, no, you're going to serve your entire sentence.
And then he actually went back, I think, as well, and said, well, now that I'm on probation, I'm out. I'm on probation. I want to get my probation taken away. I want to be a free person. I don't have to, I don't have to answer to anybody. And they rejected that as well. But the two things you hear from prosecutors, and I don't buy these at all. One is, oh, well, maybe we would have lost at trial. You thought, well, once you have Martha Runkle, who's right inside this whole thing and is willing to testify. I mean, they said in our coverage, that was the tipping point, where the minute you know your inside right-hand person is going to testify against you, that's why he said, okay, I'm going to plead guilty. But when you have that as a prosecutor, are you really thinking you're not going to win this case? Especially when you have 30 charges. You don't have to win all 30 charges, but if you charge them with 30 counts, you're going to get at least a dozen of those, you would think, and you would get far more than 12 years. I was shocked. I still to this day, it's kind of...
It is pretty shocking. It's shocking that he's already out, too.
Yeah.
I mean, he was able... It doesn't seem... Yeah. I know this was 2011, but it doesn't seem long enough.
And the other argument you get from prosecutors is, as you mentioned, Jess, one is we might have lost the case, so now we're for sure going to get some justice. But the other is, well, this is a real come down for him. This is a real, he's going to have to be in prison, and he's used to living in a mansion. This is really, do you understand? This is its own punishment. Yeah, so I'm rolling my eyes right along with you, Jess.
One thing that we just never heard, and I wish we could have heard it, was an apology. Like you never heard from Doug Vaughan. He admitted all of this stuff, but he never apologized to the investors or apologized for what he did.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And sometimes prosecutors or the judge in some cases will make that part of like, okay, what is your side of this? And really walk us through this whole thing. I don't even feel like we got that out of Doug Vaughan in this case.
And you could see we're walking outside of the courtroom with our, cameras on, our microphone, asking him, hey, do you have anything to say? And he's just like, no comment.
Yeah.
So
You would think at some point there would be some contrition on his part. You would say,
absolutely,
look, I did this. I'm sorry. I'm not proud of it. I feel bad for all of these people. Not a word of that.
The feds have been trying, even up until now, trying to get some of that money back to those investors. They were able to recover $38 million out of the $80 million, and a lot of that was from the stuff they sold from his home. And so let's take a look at that story. This is Kim Holland.
The so-called Ponzi Palace is up for bid. All 4 bedrooms, 7 baths, 6,900 square feet of it. This is Doug Vaughan's mansion in the Heights, complete with lions guarding the entrance, a poolside cabana, and his company logo everywhere. Investigators say he built this home in 2007 and bought the lavish furnishings for it after bilking hundreds of investors out of more than $70 million. With only 3 written offers, realtors and the government-appointed trustee overseeing Vaughan's estate thought auctioning off the house would be the best way to unload it and recoup some of the money.
It's easier to do an auction and have everybody who wants the house sitting in the same room, hearing what the bids are.
It's the most expeditious, and it has the best chance of getting the highest amount of money for the creditors.
It hasn't been an easy sale. The house that sits on the 3rd green of the Tanawon Golf Course first went on the market last June for $2.5 million. Since then, the price has dropped. Today, it's listed for $1.8 million. When it hits the auction block Tuesday, you'll find a steal of a deal.
Because there's still a mortgage on it, and the mortgage has to be paid off. And we really have to start at $1.4 million, which is what the auction's going to start at.
The money from the sale will go to the administrative costs first. Then the mortgage will be paid. What little money, if any, is left over will then reimburse investors who lost millions. The home doesn't include all of these pricey items inside, which realtors estimate are worth more than $2 million. It's still unclear if Vaughan will be able to keep the furnishings or if they'll be auctioned off as well.
Just unbelievable when you see this.
And that house became, during our coverage, by the way, iconic, right?
Yes.
That house was like, okay, this is the wealth and this is the extravagance that is Doug Vaughan. It's almost worthy of like Liberace or something. You would think be living inside this house, right? A lot of balcony space. I don't know what she's about. Anyway, but that was
tons of rooms, and he's the only guy living there. Like, I mean, it's just
4 bedrooms, 7 baths,
like,
7,000 square feet. Okay.
Just ginormous. Even up until this year, in 2025, investigators found a little bit more money and some memorabilia that they were able to pay back a little bit more to their investors. So you can tell, like, there's still, if there's any way that the feds can try to find any of that money anywhere, you know, and they sold a lot of that furniture. They were able to sell a lot of that furniture, and they gave a lot of that back to some of the investors. So,
and at last check, Doug Vaughan was in Phoenix on probation, out of prison.
Yeah. And that is
the
story of Doug Vaughan.
Pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So we thank you for visiting with us and sharing this story of New Mexico's Bernie Madoff. We'll see you next time here on New Mexico Crime Files.